they going to suburb?
All right, so let's get started. Well, first of all, let me welcome everyone again and tell a few words about the format which I'm offering, because it's not very conventional. We tried out this kind of format of talks about music in Los Angeles, and it worked very well with the audience over there. The essence of it is comparative listening. So it's all centered about a group of, the presentation is centered around the selection of music that is supposed to illustrate something. And then listeners are supposed to kind of look for certain things in the music, comparing the pieces, and then trying to kind of connect what they experience while listening to it to some structures in the music. And I'm kind of acting as a guide, explaining those things. So in a way, it's more as though if we all together would go to a painting gallery, for instance, and then stand in front of some whatever painting and talk about it, and then go and compare it to some other painting. So what I wanted to start our conversation with is about the issue of how music expresses in general, and this relates not only to classical music but to everything together. And from this point of view, the best to set the perspective right, probably it is a good idea to compare just our everyday experiences from using music and using language, because lots of differences and similarities you can see just by comparing how do we perceive speech when we hear it and music when we hear it. And here, obviously, similarities are that you have certain patterns that we kind of recognize, quite intuitively recognize. We don't have to kind of learn to study with a textbook. We kind of learn it just by growing and kind of being exposed to something. And in the same way how we learn a language, how to understand it, we learn a music culture, so that then we can some sort of make sense of typical compositions of that culture. And one of the, there are a few very important differences between music and language. One, I will name just a few of them briefly. So something that you can call compositeness, because the difference is in language, we're basically listening to a combination of phonemes. And that's basically all our attention is on the contrast between t, for instance, and o, and syllables that are made out of it, and then we kind of automatically recall which meaning corresponds to a specific combination of phonemes. But in music, you have a lot more aspects of music that are kind of meaningful, that contribute to it. Not only one as a phonemic contrast. You have timbre too, which is important. Technically speaking, distinctions between phonemes is it falls within the domain of timbre. But in music, we also listen to pitch. That's what we perceive as melody. Changes when a tone goes a little bit higher, or a little bit lower, or stays the same, and then by how much. So all of it makes expression of a certain kind. We listen to rhythm. We compare shorter sounds to longer sounds, and then we kind of associate different what they call semantic content for what we hear. We listen to metric aspect of music as groups of beats that we hear in music, and so on. So all of them, because there are so many of them and we listen to them simultaneously, that is why our perception of music is kind of more multi-channel as compared to hearing speech. Another very important difference is that in speech people take turns. If people start talking on top of each other, it becomes cacophony, and it's very hard to follow. Everybody perceives it as something bad. But in music, it's very common for people to kind of together to do music. And it involves not only when one, say, instrument is playing accompaniment to some singer, well, it's obvious, but you can have many people singing exactly the same melody, for instance, or playing exactly the same tune. And that also creates quite its own impression as like how many people are together, what exactly like they're playing. And even if you take like something as simple as like rap music, like they would like talk in a kind of with intonation, like musicalized kind of like type of speech. And then they will snap fingers, and the snapping is nothing but like adding rhythm to like aspect of expression of rhythm, to adding it to melodic changes of the tone of the voice. So as you see, this aspect of what they call how many performers are involved into music and how they're kind of arranged together is quite unique to music. And then finally, another important aspect of music is that it's a lot more lengthy compared to speech. If you take, for instance, a sentence of regular speech, it's usually like at least like 2 or 3 times shorter than a phrase like in music, especially if you take like music like Bach, for instance. The phrase over there, it can go like basically for 1.5 minutes maybe, 2 minutes, like it's not uncommon. Like in the music score, it would be like a page of music, and without any interruption. Whereas like for speech, a sentence like that would be a murder, because nobody would be able to follow it. So as a result, what we see already from this comparison is that music is a lot more meditative, like it's kind of contemplative by design. The idea of music is not to keep informing you about like what is changing, in contrary to what we have in speech. But the idea is to make sure that we all experience more or less the same emotional state while listening to music. So it's some sort of, the purpose of music is to bring you into that state, and then to make sure that you won't snap out of it. And your perception would be kind of in line with perception of other people who are together with you. So it's social by its inherent design, and it is contemplative. So that's what sets it apart. And that is why it becomes a lot better, more effective in communicating emotions. And that's another thing that people talk a lot, musical emotions. Emotions that are expressed in music, they can also be expressed verbally. But like no speech, even poetic speech, can express it as reliably as music can. And for a few reasons. Because people use words very easily to lie. But in music, lying is much harder, because if we're playing music together, like, and I like don't feel what I play, like you get a sense that I'm not genuine in it. The same thing with listeners. Like if you have like an audience, they pretty much like everybody, what do you call, gets in tune like with neighbors, and usually you have like audience, like it works out after a while, certain mode of perception, and then people kind of feel togetherness of it, and then it works, it makes an impression on performers too, because they're sensitive to that. So there's like as though agreement between like all parties involved in what you call music act. So in that sense, musical emotions differ from real life emotions, because what we have in music, it's basically each culture, it selects those emotions that are the most important in that given culture, and then some sort of works out distinctions between those emotions, and it can ignore some emotions. Whereas in real life, it's a different story. For instance, we have such emotions as basic emotions that everybody perceives, and like, for instance, their recognition is like very much reliable across all cultures, is anger, disgust, fear, happiness, sadness, and surprise. Well, out of them, one emotion is never used in music, is disgust. I have never heard about a piece of music which would be created with a purpose to make everybody feel disgusted. And
Case the mic didn't catch that. Music.
Okay. Yeah, rap. Well.
That's another story.
It's actually arguable if it is music at all. Yeah, but at any rate, what is important is because the primary function of music is to make you enjoy the sounds. You see, and you cannot enjoy something that is disgusting. So, in that sense, the very purpose of music is kind of opposite to that. But within these other feelings, we have quite big varieties. For instance, in classical music, there is enormous richness of different shades of sadness. It could be like grief, like in Funeral March, for instance, or it could be nostalgia, like something very bittersweet, or it could be like melancholy, and a lot greater than in real life, probably. And that's exactly because music some sort of focuses on all these shades. And the same thing goes for other emotions, like anger, for instance, because anger also can differ from annoyance to rage in its intensity, or in its kind of stability. You can have defensiveness, or you can have hate, like something that is very established. So musical expressions of them also would be some sort of idiomatic in that sense. So with all of this in mind, now we can go to a little quiz that I created. I will play for you, there are 8 pieces of music. Like the first 3 of them are coming from classical music, then 2 other ones are coming from Chinese classical music, and then 3, the last ones are coming from Kazakh music, which is like Central Asia. It's a country in between Russia and China, a big country. And with the purpose to all of them are created for a human voice together with a plucking instrument. For classical music, it would be guitar. For those other like relatives of guitar, like kui, for instance, or chin. And the question would be, what is the expression of the music piece? And when you answer it, then try to also think what in music prompts you, what directed you in choosing that it has this or that character. And then we will compare it with another piece of music. All right? So here is the first piece. I won't tell it what it is first, but after we listen, I can explain. Okay. So here is the first one. Okay, so anybody wants to start? Oh, sorry. How do I stop it? Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
So what was the emotional?
Yeah, so what would you thought? How can you characterize this piece?
This emotional
I think it was sad.
expression. Grief.
Grief.
Sad.
Also longingness. It had a aria-like operatic feel to it. I
Yes.
feel like that's the woman
True.
who's longing for her lover who's separated or maybe dead for some reason.
Oh, well.
That's still separation. It's either spatial or temporal.
Oh.
maybe the past.
Yeah, wow, you guys are doing so well, because now let me tell you what it is. It's actually indeed aria by Henry Purcell from the opera Dido and Aeneid, and it is like a ground, very famous ground, when I am laid in earth. It's sung by a legendary queen of Carthage, and is coming from Virgil's Aeneid. Like, so she sings this aria before she kills herself, when Aeneid is leaving, like, for the war, like in Troy. And it's like one of the most like famous, like tragic, what do you call, funeral, some sort of expressions. Now, where is it coming from, music? What, like, it's amazing, because you perceived like both, like that it was like a separation, that it was like related to the past, because it's like about love, about that affection, and that it is going to be no more. And some sort of, as though it's an end to something.
Yeah, so
That finality.
sadness, this deep sadness sort of characterized the emotional expression of this music, as you all had something to say about that.
So what prompted you?
The tempo also.
Slow, yeah. First of all, it's like very measured steps, like, and for real life, it's like a bit too slow. Yeah, like
It has a minor key.
minor key. Another good point.
I was going to say too that I felt like it was coming to a decision.
Oh yeah. That she was kind of like not decided in her mind as like what to
Towards
do.
the end, it was more she decided.
Oh, yeah. So there's like a process, as though, like certain openness, so that it was like amorphous in a way, you can say, but not very directed. Like, in other words, by listening to its beginning, you couldn't foretell like what is going to be. Anything else? Like,
Yeah, because the melody would go all the time up and down, like
yeah.
down.
Da, 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 da. It's like little waves, like as though it doesn't have energy. There were no leaps in the melody, if you noticed.
Very meandering like this.
Right. And only the descending like leaps. Dee, pa, 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 dun, da, da, da. It's like sounding like sighs. So that probably also contributed to it. And plus, on top of it, did you notice that the guitar, like, it started playing in a very chromatic way? Re, re, do, des, do, because si, bemol, la. So it's like all what they call chromatic tones. And in Western classical music, chromaticism, especially for minor key, they're usually associated with something tragic, with something pessimistic. Okay, so we got like few like pointers in the music that actually directed our perception. Now, how about this piece of music?
Я помню вальса звук прелестный, весенней ночью в поздний час. Его пел голос неизвестный, и песня дивная лилась. Да то был вальс прелестный, томный, да то был дивный вальс.
Okay, let's stop here. So, how would you characterize this piece?
So this is also an aria which has an operatic feel to it, but I think it's more like celebratory. It's like, I feel she is wanting to welcome something or somebody. It could be a spring or a harvest festival, or a hero who's returning to the hometown after conquering an enemy or something. But it's like celebration and full of anticipation
Anticipation, yeah.
and good expectations. So it's joyful and cheerful.
So it's happy, basically. Yeah, it was like happy and, sort of happy.
And what in music like directed you towards this conclusion?
The tempo, it's fast.
Faster, right? So you could feel like
The energy, right?
So it's kind of like more ongoing energy. Agree. Anything
the
else?
Waltzing, the waltz,
Yeah, did you notice the characteristic pattern of the accompaniment? Pa 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 pa. Like
Once, right?
yeah, it's actually a romance, like a very old, like traditional Russian romance for guitar and like a voice, and it's a song that is called I remember the lovely sound of the waltz. So the words, the lyrics are talking that during the winter storm, I remember the summer night party where a beautiful lady sang like a beautiful song. So I would add to it like, that it is in major, it's written in a major key, the whole thing. Then also the music had lots of leaves. Da 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 da, ta 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 ta, ta 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 ta, and it had like lots of passages, like short notes. So the rhythm was more active too. And then another thing was that it was more compact. If you notice that, like compared to the previous melody, this one probably was like 3 times shorter, right? So and like unlike the other one, here you could have probably predicted by hearing the beginning of it what it is going to be like, the continuation. So it was like not as amorphous. Okay, now the third example.
Под окном стою я с гитарою. Много мук я стерпел и страдать был бы рад, если б сердце согрел мне твой ласковый взгляд. Так, взгляни на меня хоть один только раз, ярче майского дня чудный блеск твоих глаз. Так, взгляни на меня хоть один только раз, ярче майского дня чудный блеск твоих глаз.
Oh, okay, I'll stop here.
We chosen a Russian so people would not hear the words, which would give them the sense of what is music about.
That's true. They'll have to judge by music, not by words.
Anti-cheating mechanisms.
Well, of course, like, yeah, Marina has advantage because she understands the words.
Don't give it away.
No, that's very
So-
important.
So what do you think is the expression of this
I
one?
think it's a man who's starting to fall in love.
Oh, bravo! I was not sure that you'll get this one.
And the reason is that it's in a minor key, but it's happy.
Yeah.
And he goes up and then comes down, and then he goes up and then he comes down, and up, and he's going higher.
So it's like more excited, like there are more changes like here compared like to the previous. Because the previous also was fast, but it kind of like was more consistent like in its like melodic phrases.
This is not so fast. It was kind of medium.
It kind of lazy, at times it kind of accelerates, at other times like a little bit relaxes.
And I don't speak Russian.
Yeah, and but by the way, like the music itself is not Russian too. It is written by Emil Waldteufel. It's a Austrian composer, like from Vienna, like a second Viennese school, like what they call. It's a contemporary of Strauss. Like Johann Strauss is like, that kind of like light music of Vienna, approximately like between 1810 to roughly 1870s. Like that was the style. And that's exactly, it's a My Dear romance serenade, like directed to a girl and basically asking for her favor and then telling like how much like the person like loves, admires her. So as you see, for Western classical music, you guys like you basically had like a intuitive competence. You kind of like you could figure out what the music is about, and in that sense, you would be like very good referees. Like if somebody would perform it, for instance, not very expressive, like you would like frown, like say, could be better. Or in contrary, if somebody like these performers, for instance, were very good, like and like if you heard like any of them live, you'd probably give them a good like round of applause, I would imagine. But now let's move on. Now we are going to to go to a tricky one. So here it will be an example from classical Chinese music. Not many people know that in China they have their own classical music because like it's actually a very ancient country. The very first musical pieces that like survived over there are dated like by 6th century BC. So it's as old as like Western tradition. In the West, we have like the oldest examples are coming from Euripides. This is like 5th century BC too, about that time. Yeah, and in China, it also was like centered like by aristocracy around the palace music. Their music system is called Yayu, and it has like set of like various specific rules, even stricter than in Western classical music. There is less variation, so performers are more kind of like stiffened with what should be there. But let's see if you would be able to recognize what is the character of the music. Okay, let's stop it here. Anybody wants to start?
She telling a story.
So it's like a fairy tale or something like that, like you would associate? Or narration, just in general?
I got the feeling she was wondering about something or missing something.
Oh, I see. That's a good point. Yeah. Warm. Anybody else? No?
I have no idea.
No.
It does sound like the music you would play in a nice autumn evening with the the moon and by a pond.
Oh, actually, it's not bad at all.
But the lyrics I was trying to listen to, I did not understand. So.
Oh, it's probably because like words are too old, kind of. Because it's actually lyrics are coming from Li Jinjiao, a famous poetess of the Song dynasty. So it's like 960 to like 1279 approximately.
Yeah,
so it's Middle Ages.
Oh, so it's a woman.
Yeah, she wrote love poems.
Yeah. She was very famous, like
Yes.
highly regarded. And this piece was transcribed from the manuscript called Donggao Qin Scores. And it expresses a nostalgic feeling for relatives. So indeed, like, you were right about nostalgia, like about this kind of like as though memories like of the past, and you also are right that it's contemplative and it is like solitary, and it's personal, intimate in a way, you can say. So interesting that you still could hear it, although none of you probably is familiar like with the kind of idioms of this type of music.
I think what probably puts
What
it
in the music, yeah,
category is the fact that it is sort of a slow, yes, and that puts it in a more personal and solitary. The fact that she's only, we hear her singing and with a little bit of an accompaniment that's not big. So that already puts it in a particular category.
You might also have like noticed that the music sounded as though it was in a minor It's a pentatonic music, right? But pentatonic also can be major or minor. It could be da 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 da. That sounds like major, or it could be da 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 pom 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 da. That sounds like minor. And this song was exactly in the second case. Then another thing I would add here that you also could hear that the notes were kind of like gradual. There were no leaps, so like it was not overly excited, and the duration of the motifs in the melody were all basically kind of on longer side. They were like stitched together without much break between them, so that like suggests some connectivity, some kind of like as though you have a focus on something, and that's probably what directed you in terms of thinking that it is personal, like lyrical, like of some kind, warm. Okay, now let's listen to something different.
老渔翁一钓竿，靠山崖傍水湾，扁舟来往无前旁，梢点点清波远。
Okay, let's stop it here. Anybody wants to start?
That sounded like a tribute or an ode to somebody or something, like the king or the god or somebody in a position of power.
Oh, so it's like praising, like
Yes,
that's what you thought. Oh,
that's what it felt like.
anybody else?
Well, it was very powerful, you know, the way he was singing it, it was very sort of
Assertive.
assertive and definite and
Celebration.
celebratory. Yes, yes.
So basically happy, you would
Yes.
say, like in its mood, right? Now, what in the music like prompted you to think that way?
High pitch.
Yeah, like he kind of like he started low, but he very quickly get up, and like obviously you do it if you're excited, right? And excited by something permanent, like not just like a whimsical kind of like mood. Anything else?
There's more power in the voice.
Huh?
There was more power in the voice.
Yeah.
Intensity.
I thought it was
Timbre.
more like coaching, like telling people to go out and win the ball game or whatever.
Oh, like as though kind of how
like
do you call
trying
it?
to work up
Motivational.
motivation.
Imperative, like
Pep talk.
more like imperative, like as though sentences, like tell them to do. Oh, well, this one like didn't appear as good as the first one, but it's also coming from about the same time, but from a different manuscript, and the name of the poem is Ban Chao pouring out his feelings, and technically speaking, the poem itself is like an idyll. So it depicts leisurely life of the old fisherman, which like the administrator in the palace, he's dreaming about retiring, not to work anymore, and to kind of have like a nice life, like somewhere like
Wishful thinking.
yeah, wishful thinking, exactly. So that probably reflects like also hardship like of his work, I guess, like that kind of like affirmity, like but I would add here that this music like was in a major key, also like in a major pentatonic, and it was like a lot more animated, and it had like some leaps, if you notice. So it was like much more excited. So, and now let's go to my third set of examples. So here we have Kazakh music, which like not many people know about, of course. But Kazakh music, they also have authorship, very much like in Western classical music. So they remember, they feature composers of like works, and then there are songs that are cover songs that everybody sings and repeats, reproduces. So in that sense, it is no different than Western music or Chinese music that also has authors. And people remember also tunes, and then they carry them, although they don't have notations over there, so it all goes by ear. So this 3 songs that I'm going to show you, they all are coming from their, like the most celebrated composer by the name Birjan Sal, like who lived between 1834 and 1897. And Kazakh performers call such composers akyn. So basically, they play on an instrument that resembles like a domra, kui, they call it, and they accompany their singing and improvise poems to a given occasion. So the music here is very well documented as when it was composed, improvised, and what it had to express. But let's see if we can figure it out. So this is the first example.
Leylem şarrak degen gav, leylem şarrak. Tavdan akkan kum gayrak, sen bir bulav. Kayıs bolsan, cep bolsan, özüme ver. Şenerimden bağasav, karka sarau.
Okay, we'll stop it here. Any ideas?
To me, it felt like reminiscence. The singer is reminiscing about good times gone by. We're reviewing and revisiting some good memories from the past, and maybe wishing it were true in the present as well. But looks like it's not true in the present.
So it's like some sort of nostalgic, like in a way,
Yeah.
about beautiful things in the past. Any other
I
opinions?
was thinking birthday song.
Birthday songs. So it's like
So
festive, like celebrating something.
Yeah.
Oh.
I feel it's like a conversation with nature, gods, maybe, I don't know.
Oh, praising nature, like how beautiful
A
nature
little
is.
bit like pagan, maybe.
Pagan.
Yeah.
Oh, so you thought it's like kind of has to do like some ritual,
Just
like
calls
something,
to nature, to
Oh.
all, maybe.
a hymn to nature.
Maybe him, yeah.
Oh, I
And
see.
calls, definitely. Talking.
To me, it sounded as though, I don't know, I mean, as though he was sort of wanting something, wishing something was true, but then realizing that maybe not. There was a positive and
And
then
negative.
getting into the negative, realizing that it can't be. It was this sort of a...
Disappointment.
tension.
Yes, there was a
The
tension
reality
between
and the
these
wish.
two.
Oh.
Yes, yes,
So-
yes.
so
Oh, bifurcated, like they didn't meet. Oh, I see. Interesting ideas, and they're kind of quite contradictory. Please notice that, like with the previous music, we had like more of agreement, right? And here it is a love song, basically, called "Beautiful Laylim." And the occasion for its composition was that when the composer himself, like he, you know, by the way, that in Kazakhstan they have like harems, like so it's like polygamy, like basically, right? So he like received, he also had like 3 wives, I think, like this composer. And then he received an offer from a rich man, like a very generous offer, who liked one of his wives, so he wanted like to take the wife, and then this Birjan Zal, like he refused. Like he basically said, like in the song, he's saying that his wife is more dear to him than anything else in the world. So basically, it's a quite complex.
I heard Mary and Shannon.
And then he raised the price to me.
Instead of bargaining. But as you see, like in this specific music, it kind of like didn't hook any of the musical patterns like present there. They didn't signal us much because, okay, so music was like relatively excited. It sounded like as though it was also in major pentatonic, like in the last Chinese piece that we heard. And it also like had like kind of like, phrases for like as though you could hear some sort of elated in some way, but like hard to decide. That's because like we all are unfamiliar with the conventions of this music. And in this music, as you can see, it steps further away from like what they call the biological ground that like before used to work with other pieces of music, like tempo, for instance, like shortness or lengthiness of a melodic phrase, how many jumps or not, like there are no jumps, maybe it's like a stepwise, like all of these like things here in this music, it didn't work very well. But let's see, like maybe we'll fare better like with another song, with another image.
Şetine ormalıdın tüydüm soğusar köp жылғай көк алады көлді шусар кешегі ел қыдырған есер шақта әнекен бір жан салады жамбасы парай Haladım ay 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 haladım ay 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 haladım ay 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 haladım ay ay.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Wife sold, man happy.
Yeah. Well, let me get another husband. Difficult. Is it difficult? Probably.
I was thinking it was advice the father was giving to his son.
Oh. I see. So it's like an old man, basically. Like that's what you're saying. Like
Body wisdom.
Probably
wisdom.
little things.
Oh.
I mean, you know, I don't know. Maybe the son was 12.
Oh, I see. A boy. Oh.
The instrument sounded almost more animated, maybe even like competitive, but then once you started
Like
singing, it
advice,
didn't
yeah.
really, it wasn't consistent with that image.
Oh, but the instrument, by the way, the accompaniment differed from the previous song quite like a lot. It was
Here,
more
here
kind
it felt
of
like more
busy,
like
tense.
moving forward,
Uh-huh.
much more animated.
Oh, yeah. More tension.
So I would have thought like it was something like competitive, or it could have been something like if they're going to go on a hunt or something. But then the singing didn't really support that, so it's, I'm not sure.
So you thought that it's negative, like there was like some negativity into the music.
No,
Did
not
you?
necessarily negative. Just
Oh.
put some like tension or excitement.
Oh.
It was going somewhere.
Well, the title of the song is The Wedding Gift, and it actually is sarcastic.
Oh,
It's sarcastic because like he is like talking about a situation when you have an old man who is like trying to get a young wife and giving like her like relatives like her father like a very generous gift, like but then the wife like doesn't love like this like old man because he's too old, and even if she will give birth to children, those children probably won't enjoy like playing with him because he's too old, like cannot like really run or like do with them. So it's a very sad song, basically. Yeah.
I heard that. Is that
Some sort of regret about something, like as though something is missing. It's negative. It's basically an expression of pain, of anguish, of some kind, like which, like for us, it's like very hard to get because we are not sensitive to. This music probably shows more things through rhythm, like and the relationship between the rhythm of the accompaniment and then the melodic line of the singer.
Yeah, the beginning of it sounded like American rock music.
Well, that's because American rock music is also based on pentatonic. Usually, melodical. They just like put chords that are kind of like, can be seventh chords or whatever. And then the final example, let's see, what did you think about this one?
Зады бір жандау сен қоңыр қаздай басқаға бір өзіңнен жүрдім жазбай мәжілісі жандар алдың болады деу жан ботамаз амдалдың ала жаздай
Okay.
Wife died.
Oh, negative.
Yeah, it sounds pretty sad.
Uh-huh.
From the voice. I mean, I can't.
Oh, judging by the timbre of the voice.
The
Yeah.
quivering.
Quivering, yeah.
No,
You're
the
right.
son died. The wife was happy.
So like, I can't tell from that particular instrument that the man sounds pretty unsettled.
Ah, unsettled. Yeah, you're right. You were sensitive to that point.
You read the story about all this song.
Ah, well, this is an expression of anger. Like, it's a very angry song. And it was composed, and the title of it is translated as Crazy. And it was improvised when the composer, Birjan Sal, was invited by Aznabai, a local administrator, to perform music for the Russian governor who was supposed to visit that area. And but then instead of waiting for the governor, Birjan Sal started like playing music for common people. And then this administrator, Aznabai, became like upset by it and like ordered him to stop and to wait. And when like the singer refused, then he sent like, a policeman to confiscate his instrument, the dobra, on which he was playing. And then he started like resisting, and as a result, he was beaten by the policeman. And then he became very angry, and then like improvised the song where he is saying that the person who invited him had to kind of venerate, like respect him as a guest, and to defend him like against, like because like they have like honor culture, honor code in Kazakhstan. So it's like a guest like receives like privileges that like it's like as though controlled by deities. Like if somebody like breaks this hospitality code, then like it's bad. Like God will punish this person. So basically, the song is like talking about like how rich people very easily become haughty and like disrespect like common people, and that it's like a very bad way of doing things. As you see, like in this song, like again, it was only like the manner of like singing, basically, the articulation of the voice that basically told you like why you could feel it, but not for everybody. And the reason for it is exactly because, as you see, that's how it works with music. With some pieces, you can have what do you call this biologically rooted means of expression. Some sort of they betray it. Like we still can feel it across cultures, but in other cultures, you might have like some idioms, some patterns of music that you just like have to kind of know it. You have to live there. You have to see what people sing in which situation. Like when, for instance, if it's a lullaby or if it's a march or whatever, and then just like learn what kind of patterns, what kind of rhythms, or like musical phrases and the duration, tempo, like people are using in order to express various things. And it's only after being exposed, after actually seeing how it works, then you can kind of like acquire some expertise and like start understanding what's going on. So that's what we basically deal with as listeners in Western classical music too. There are certain expressions in it that are kind of biologically rooted to the extent that they leave us no way like to kind of like judge it like in some other way. No alternative interpretations.
Can you say what they are?
Yeah, like one of the what do you call most universal modes of what do you call perception of music is dynamics. What is called like a distinction between how loud or how soft the music is, and it very much relies on our kind of inborn capacity to kind of interpret sounds in our environment. Because like obviously something that is like very loud, it's kind of presents potentially immediate danger. It's like maybe our ancestors, like they lived like somewhere like in savannah, and if they would hear like very loud roar like nearby, that's like a big warning that something is going to happen, something dangerous. And in the opposite way, if for instance they were hunting something, like a little like small sound is the sound of a prey, so it's easy to kind of kill, it's easy to then get food
So you're
from it.
talking about pitch now?
I'm talking about loudness, dynamics.
Just the dynamics.
Yeah, so that is why, again, lots of people like, take it for granted, but it's not that obvious, because dynamics has its own semantics. In other words, like when we hear something loud, we actually interpret it as that either it is nearby, and then therefore you are more affected by it than like by a distant sound, which is like further away, and then that is why you are a safe observer. So you would be more in kind of what do you call objective like mode. Like whereas like, with loud music, it is going to touch you, it is going to affect you, it would be more subjective. Then loud is also associated with something dominating and something overwhelming, whereas soft with something submissive or detached. And loud is very often associated with something irritating or even angry, whereas soft with something pleasant and kind. And here, for instance, we can like listen to this piece of music which uses sudden changes from very loud to very soft. Well, let's see how would you understand its expression. Okay, we'll stop here.
What is
So,
that?
what do you think? Oh, the music?
Seems to be
It's Mussorgsky. Yes, this is the Golden Gates of Kiev, like from his pictures at an exhibition. Yeah, it's the last movement of this like suite. Yeah, but anybody wants to say? What do you think? Like, what was like the meaning? Like,
to
was
me,
that
it
like
sounded like a
loud?
patriotic song, like could have been a like national anthem or a
Uh-huh.
state anthem or something like that.
Oh.
Like, you know, like
Procession.
something that
Yeah, you're right.
honors,
Yeah, you both are right. Yeah. And like the soft, like why would it turn into soft suddenly?
Maybe the poor people?
Was it like first of all, was it the same character? Could it be the same character that has like two capacities? One just like pompous,
It
like
was
powerful,
like
and the other.
had a procession, and they had like military people, and then they had some like children.
Ah, I see. So different.
It's like a cut
participants.
scene in like a film. You would expect like you see the procession, and you see like the kids playing in the alley or something, and then it goes back and forth.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, what basically why we know what it was, because like the whole thing was created as illustrations of paintings. Like it was like there was like a Russian painter of German stock, like who created like a whole exhibition of like paintings, and then Mussorgsky like he went like to this exhibition, and then he was like so much impressed by them, so he wrote a musical piece that would illustrate each of the paintings. So this is like one of the compositions that is written on fine art, basically. So it's a program music on fine art, and that one's exactly it showed like a triumphal arc. Like basically, like which was like a city, like Kremlin. Like in ancient Russia, each big city used to have a Kremlin, so it's like a tower basically, and you'd have like a kind of parade like entrance into it, which was used like exactly for festivities, and that's like an equivalent of our parade, military parade, and that was exactly a demonstration of the power of the whole nation of that city. So that's like what you heard in the very beginning. And then the second one, it suddenly softened. It was just like group of beggars, of like vagabonds, yeah, like who were like asking like for money or whatever. And then they were some sort of like more religious, more like as though like appealing to like mercy, that type of a thing. And then that is why it's like it was like complete like dichotomy, as you would feel like. But then to Mussorgsky it was important because he always like was very sensitive to common people. So he wanted to show how like one thing, like it could have like a coin that has two sides. One is like as though very shiny, and then another one is like not that shiny. So from that point of view, it was like a realistic culture that prompted him to employ this like distinction between loud and soft to his advantage. Okay, now yet another aspect of dynamics is the presence of accents, a sudden like what they call surge of like loudness on one specific tone or on two specific tones, or it could be on succession of tones, and they also are speaking something in a way that you cannot ignore it, because our muscular system is designed in such a way that we hear like loud like sound, then we experience contraction, sudden contraction of muscles, and like it's beyond like even if you don't focus on like what you hear, your body still will react in that way. So because of that, if the music is filled with accents, there are lots of accents, then they project the expression of something determined, vigorous, impulsive, and the opposite of it, when there are no accents, like smooth, it presents the impression of something tentative or feeble or maybe apathetic. So here is an example of strongly accentuated music. Let's see. Okay, so how would you characterize like?
To me, it seemed like battle music, something they could sing to mobilize and unite the forces before the war or before the attack.
Something that has to do with fighting,
Yes.
with like combat.
Yeah, combat.
Oh, well, good point. Anybody else like noticed anything?
Sounds like assassination.
There's an element of suspense to it somehow.
Yes,
Some
suspense.
mysterious, something's going to happen. Maybe a chase sequence or.
I see.
It was very powerful, you know, there was definitely a sense of some very confidence and power.
Yeah, I agree that there's a sense of anticipation of something to come, though.
Oh, I see.
That there. There's some.
So something kind of
like
mystic
some
or
foreboding
mysterious.
sense. It's like a sense of foreboding or something.
Ah, I see. Oh, that's a good point.
Yes, that's true.
Oh, indeed, it's the opening theme of Symphony Number 2 by Borodin, which has a what they call program name, Bogatyr, which in Russian is called a strong man. Like it's like a warrior, strongman warrior who usually started battles, because in medieval times, like when two armies they met each other, usually the strongest person from one army had a combat, like individual combat with another person, and then it was believed that it would forecast like the outcome of the whole like, what they call fight. So that was exactly the picture of that kind of like as though legendary medieval like warrior of all times. That is why it's a very unusual example, because it's like literally everything is accentuated here. Like when they play it on string instruments, they use like such articulation that the bow always goes down on every single note. So they don't play it at ta tan 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 tan. No, they play it ta 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 with this like motion down, and that is why it makes everything so beefy, so strong. No, the very same composer and like completely different music. What is the difference? Let's see. Joyous, yes.
Celebratory.
Right, but like, isn't it like also very relaxed? Like
Yeah.
incredible. What you probably get the impression is as though it's all stretching out, like right. There are no like breaks, like complete continuity. In fact, like much of it was coming from the melody, like what you had, like a very, very long phrase. Pa, 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 ra, 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 ra. I'm running out of breath, but then it still is going on. You see, total opposite to the other one, to, 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 where each note was like separate. Here we see the results of how something that is called articulation affects us, because the second example it used the articulation of legato. Legato is smooth when notes are connected with each other without breaks, and then as a result the whole thing is like as though glides or kind of gradually unveils, and then like, that's exactly what we hear as something very feeble, some sort of vulnerable. That's not strong. Like whereas in the first one, it does the opposite. Like very dangerous, in fact. Like
Yeah, it started out as if it was like foggy, like some sort of clearing, and then the fog cleared out as it got more animated. Something more like that.
Yeah, like as though like a very vast like
Yes.
picture with like some sort of you can see everything clearly.
But you don't see it right away. It's
Horizon.
right through the fog.
Oh yeah, maybe like a sky clears and then suddenly, yeah, vista. All right, then like the next biologically like rooted kind of aspect of music that everybody perceives in the same way is the melodic motion. Because melodic motion is associated with physical motion. Melody, the tones that make the melody, they as though move in certain tempo. It could be fast or slow, but then that's what we can hear as running, or stepping, or maybe leaping, and or standing. And then we project automatically on the behavior of those tones of the melody the same things as we project when we see people moving. So involuntarily, like if there are lots of leaps, then we perceive that the kind of like it's hard, it draws energy, then you need to rest. That is why in music, in Western classical music, there is a rule, the normal way for the melody is like if you have a leap, then after the leap you have to have a gradual smooth ending. So it's like ti-ran, ti-ra-ri-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra. And if it's another jump, then like it has to come either after a break where you can rest, like ta-ra, and then again it's after like a pause you can do another ta-ra. It sounds good. But if you go ta-ra, 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 that becomes like zigzags. Like you would feel it's not normal. Or something. It should have a good reason to behave like that. So the behavior of the melody, where you have either leaps or steps, are telling us a lot. So let's see, what would it tell you in this piece of music? Okay, I'll stop it here.
Is that from a movie?
It's from a symphony, but like a symphony is like a movie. Like it's a composer who basically in all of his symphonies he was telling stories. Shostakovich.
Yeah.
Shostakovich.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like a famous composer. One of the most important symphonic composers of the 20th century. Was there anything unusual about this music that you noticed?
Lots of leaps.
Yeah, like it's non-stop, like and all leaps were very short. Did you notice that there were a couple of notes? Pa-ra, and ta-ra, ta-ra, ti-da.
Very strangely painful.
Yeah, very, very strange.
Until the final chord, it just sounded like anxiety.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Thriller.
It
It just sounded very uneasy. You don't really know where you stand, what's going on, where are like it all is very uncertain.
that was like, because it played on this incompatibility. Like,
Suspense.
yeah, the music was like very still. The accompaniment was boom, tu, tu, tum, tu, 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 as though it's like sustaining in the same mood. And then the melody was behaving completely crazy, like a lunatic, like with all this like wide, super wide like leaps, like non-stop all the time and completely disconnected. Basically, it made the music like all torn. Like the melody became kind of dissonant, like not connected together, constantly disrupted by something. And you're right that send a message to us that something is not right here. Like it kind of as though wants to relax, but cannot relax because like something is badly missing. Like maybe to the extent that maybe somebody doesn't get air, like to breathe. Like, something.
Because he was going through a series of modulations, and he didn't cadence.
Yeah.
So the new key was never established, which makes you feel anxious.
It was
You don't
wandering
know-
like all the
Yeah,
time.
you don't know where one is. You don't know where your home base is sonically.
You felt like as though you were moving somewhere towards something, but then it was always disrupted by this enormous leaps for no apparent reason.
Yeah, there's a movie music cliche that gets used a lot. I've used it myself. It's like when you have, and you can check it if you sometimes if you watch a really emotional, heart-tugging scene, listen to, and especially if you feel yourself like starting to cry and like, I don't even like this movie. Why am I about to cry?
Yes, yes.
Like notice what's going on in the background. There's a cliche. It's very effective. If you take like a sustained, really high, like unison violin note, just high pitch and sustain it over a tense scene, make it in minor, and you'll have an emotional, involuntary reaction. And it's
suggestive.
It gets used all the time. Like,
Right.
in fact, a couple of years ago, I've never seen any of those Twilight movies, but it's like on YouTube, you know, and it was like when scene of one pops up, I was like, what is this, you know? And then there's like some scene, some idiot, whatever, sad scene between idiot girl and idiot boy, and I was watching this. This is stupid. And then all of a sudden, you know, they're terrible actors and everything. And all of a sudden, it's like I started tearing up, and I was going, "What the hell is wrong with me?" And then I noticed, there it is. It's that. It's like, damn it, they got me. But it's but yeah, that's using a really high sustained note.
Pitch.
Will get emotional tension. And
Because it doesn't go anywhere.
yeah,
Like,
it grabs your ear, and because it's on a string instrument, it can be indefinitely sustained.
Yeah.
It's breathless.
yeah.
So, you know, by breathless, that makes us anxious, and it pulls us.
You're right, because like it interacts not only through physical motion, like as the melody moves, but it's also through breathing.
Yeah.
Because you would expect like something to have like an end
where
in
am I
order
gonna
to
get
take
my
a
breath?
deep breath. Yeah, that's a good
Never
point.
where. Never.
And here is another what they call principal subject from the same movement and the same symphony. What would you say about this one?
Is that 5? Shostakovich 5?
Yes.
Yeah, the Fifth Symphony by Shostakovich. It also had leaps non-stop, like and very short. But in this time it was like with imitations. One voice was doing ta da, and the other was repeating ta da, ta da, ta da, ta da. It's like shadow, like what do you call of like some object. What was your impression? Like, what was the character of this movie?
Darkness. I don't know.
Dark, yeah, probably anguish, like of some kind. Huh? Well, why?
Violent Russian history.
Because of the intervals, they were going zigzags, like without like any fillers. Like had it been, for instance, it would like project completely different feeling.
Yeah.
But it's exactly because he made it so laconic, da da, and then nothing, da da, in the opposite direction. So you'd think, oh my God, if it leaped up and now it's slipping down, something must have happened before. But what was it? Nothing. So it's the whole thing, because of that, sounded more like as though it was like oration, like some sort of like as though you have old like style kind of like politician talking to like maybe some in front of the crowd, like telling like people like let's go like like to the war, for instance, and gods are telling like something of that sort. So it had that kind of like, as though like face value, like of like let's do something, but like why, how, like unknown. Right, dictatorship. Like this. It's a dictatorial basically theme. You're right. How about this case? Like here we also have like leaps. But what would you say about them? Here we also had excessive like leaps in, and by the way, in the same direction. Like enormous, like kind of like leaps. What was your perception of the character here?
It had steps before it leaped.
Yeah, it was not all
It
leaps
was
like
not sudden
by
leaps.
themselves.
And then when it got up there,
Like warming up, as
yeah,
though.
and then again it took some other steps before it
Mhm.
began. So
Smoothened.
that made it a little bit more pleasant, so to speak.
I see.
Less anguished.
It's a hope, but with doubts.
Hope with
Doubts.
I see, with doubts.
Hope with doubt.
Right.
Yeah, I found like the chords to be unsettling.
Uh-huh.
There were like some dissonances in the chords.
Some friction, like as though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So the melodies sort of disagreed, like really, with the accompaniment. Like there was not full agreement.
What is it? Da.
Oh, it was like horns that were like 4 horns they were playing, dum, to-do, like as accompaniment, which kind of like made it sound more like as a march, as though sudden, like a kind of invasion of like just one idiom from a march. And you're right, like it also added to that like very unusual blend like, of things, and then that is why you felt probably elated, like it's as though it wants to fly, like as a bird, like to go high in sky, and it's very beautiful. But then like, it's hard, as though there is like it's not easy. Maybe it won't work. Maybe it won't fly. It's only like about to fly. And there is like, as what you noticed, if it's a march, anything, then there is some resistance, like something is kind of against it, like as though. So this created like a little bit of a conflicting sense to the whole thing. But leaps, like in this specific case, they were kind of showing more of excitement, like more of elation, especially that they went in the same direction. That's what made yeah, because in the previous examples, they were in opposite directions, like up, down, up, down. That's what created that kind of dissonance in a way. We felt like discord in the music. Here it was like more concord. And what would you say about this music and about its melody? Very well known. Anybody wants to say anything?
Brings tears to your eyes.
Was there anything like remarkable about this melody, like that you noticed?
Endless.
Endless.
was like circles.
Did you notice that it didn't have a single leap?
Yeah.
They were all steps, and occasionally they were thirds. Like it's like steps, like most of the time. Like sometimes steps in the same direction, like 2 or 3, and then the reason why you say it's like everlasting, it's like as though like non-stop. It's like kind of is there, as the existential, you would say. It was exactly because it behaved like more like what you can find maybe in Western music, only in Gregorian chant. Like if you have like in church, like because over there they would deliberately avoid any leaps because they would think like leaps like it's kind of it's human and like it's supposed to be about God. So like it has to be kind of like
You can't be excited.
yeah, it cannot be excited, you see. And then for the same reason, like in this piano concerto, Rachmaninoff exactly he chose to use this like as though church like kind of like melodies, like as though coming from plain chant. And then like as a result, the music becomes so solid, so well grounded. It's like as though there is no need in any proof, and it's just kind of powerful, so settled all by itself. So as you see, melodic leaps are also quite telling in the characterization. And now here we come to another thing that another aspect of expression that you're probably all very well familiar with, is low versus high register. Like musical register, like everybody uses this word, but like a few people kind of like think like what exactly does it mean? Register, it has to do with timbre. It has to do with coloration of tones. So when we have like a frequency range in which all tones are perceived like as though they share the same color, then we say it's the same register. When suddenly like one note like obtains different colors, we say, oh, it's a different register. And our ear is like set in such a way so that we perceive anything that is in low register as like big, coarse, like heavy. And high register usually as small, cute, light, and associated maybe with children or with some like little creatures. Let's listen to this piece of music. What did you say about it? What did you say?
Cute. And it was cute.
It was like a toy, probably, right? Very entertaining and like comfortable, right? Well, that's exactly because everything, the whole music was sustained in high register. How about this one? Okay, we'll stop
Is
here.
that Strauss?
No. Taneyev. It's like a Russian composer, like a pupil of Tchaikovsky. This is like the beginning of his overture, Oresteia, which depicts like Orestes, as you're familiar with the Greek myth. It's basically a hero who was like pursued by Irenaeus, like he was punished by God, so they didn't give him like a single like moment of peace, like tormented him like mentally, basically. And this opening exactly like was depicting it like with the help of very, very low instruments. It's unusual to have like so many like a whole double bass section. They like broke apart and then they were playing it. And double basses are deceptive instruments because you think, oh, it's a string instrument, it's quiet. One double bass like can like really balance like probably 10 trumpets, you know, like if they start playing like loud, it will stand on par.
So this sounded, don't mess with me.
Yes.
It was like, whoa.
Exactly, but not always the bass sounds like or the like this distinction like holds, because high register can also be acute. What would you say about this music?
Oof. That was so intense.
Well, the reason why it was very high, basically, like, but like it was complete opposite, like that sense of acuteness, of like piercing, something cutting through. It was primarily because of its combination with dynamics. Because when it is like very high, like in high register and very loud, then that would create like this type of impression. And the opposite of it is true, because if you have like very low like and very soft music, look what is going to happen here. So what do you think about this music?
It's a horror movie.
Oh, maybe, yeah, but it's not like that, like kind of like as like scary, like as what we heard before with those double basses.
Fear.
This was more like as though some sort of like magic, like or something like fairy tale, probably something of this sort.
Mysterious.
Yeah, because like when you have like low instrument, like in that low register, it also can be some sort of more like cat purring, for instance. It's like
Yeah, this one had more of a sense of foreboding, like you're sneaking around somewhere you're not supposed to be sneaking around, and if you get caught, something very bad will happen.
right, but
It's more like that.
but it's not given. It's a
But
probability.
it's, yeah, exactly. It's not like for sure. It's just like there's a big risk there.
And like one of the most common things that we all also know, we already touched upon, was like the contrast between fast and slow. This also is telling. Because obviously when something is fast, we think it's active, it's rushing, it's nervous and fleeting. And if it is slow, then we think it's passive, sluggish, relaxed, and it's lasting. But what happens like when we have like within the same piece, like what do you call fluctuations from very fast to very slow without any break, like in this piece? What would they say? Crazy, yes, I would agree. But why?
Well, because it was like loud and the characters were so different between sudden loudness and active, and then suddenly slow, and then as though somebody's just like trying to make you feel.
Well, in other words, like it never happens like that. That's very strange.
It's not primarily the movement of it, because one was moving very fast and some moving very slow,
Yeah.
and then moving very fast and then moving very slow. So it's like you're just
Well, it's good.
not mentally well.
Schizophrenic is the word, and that's exactly because it's coming like from a suite like written by Schumann called Carnival, where basically he depicted like different characters, and many of them were autobiographic. Like this one is called Florestan. It's like his depiction of himself, because like he suffered from schizophrenia and he had like a split personality. So like one is like as though like very excited, very impulsive, and another is very apathetic and kind of like disinterested in anything. So basically you have polar, how do you call it, disorder. Bipolar disorder, right? And that's what happens like when you have this type of a transition. And which brings us to another very important point, which I have to explain, because not anything that kind of appears as though it is fast, it is because of the tempo. Because what we hear as fast tempo is in fact what is fast there. It is the beat that is fast. In other words, it's like as though there are steps, that the pace of it is fast. But it is quite possible to have like music where the tempo is slow, but then where you have lots of short notes that like move very fast. So the fast is not the tempo, but rhythm inside of the tempo. So you can think about it as though it's a container that is filled up like with certain notes of a certain duration. And those notes can be very, very little. And then the whole thing would be, the impression would be of commotion, but the tempo would be kind of still. And the opposite is true, because you can have like also a slow tempo, but then like very fast notes. I mean like a very, very fast tempo, but very slow, very long notes. So let me illustrate it with the following example. So do you notice about this music? Was it fast or was it slow? What do you think?
Slow.
There are two different, there are two different speeds going on.
Two different speeds. Yeah, you can look at it in that way. Like you can look at the melody and the accompaniment. Accompaniment was very busy. It was, in fact, turbulent, like very virtuosic. The pianist was like playing like those passages in the left hand. And then the melody was pa pa ra da 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 da. That's not fast at all. It's in fact it's slow, and like it was like relaxed. And as a result, you had like a kind of paradoxical combination. You couldn't really relax on it because like the accompaniment would prevent you, right? But neither you could like really become like fast agitated because then the melody is kind of stops you, holds you back. So you see, well, that's an example exactly where your mind like automatically perceives that the notes are very short, but then the kind of like as though the pace is slow, and then it creates tension. That's
It's like the hands on a clock, the inner workings are spinning very fast, but the outward expressions of the clock, like the second inch is going tick.
Oh yeah, like a clock. You have like a yeah, exactly, like milliseconds for instance.
Yeah.
Something of that sort. You're right. And composers could even like create like pictures with it. Like for instance, this example is not very well known. It's by Telemann. Is a great German Baroque composer. In 1728, he started a new periodical, which he called The Faithful Music Master, which he aimed for amateur musicians who were interested like, with music to play it at home. And then he entertained them with the piece, a suite for two violins that he based on the popular back then book by Gulliver, like his travels, Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, that was published just 2 years earlier. And then he used creatively time signatures and tempo, like to characterize protagonists from the book. Like for instance, this was a movement that was, he called Chakan of the Lilliputians. Lilliputians were like little people, and then Chakan was supposed to be a very slow dance. Like it was, by times of Telemon, it was a court dance, like of French nobility, where in fact, like usually royalty, aristocracy, they usually took lessons in steps. It had such intricate steps, like where basically it was like a ceremonial dance. And then look what he makes it like, because this Chakan is by Lilliputians, so he notated it in the time signature of 3:32 instead of the regular 3:4 that was like normal for Chakan. So it's like what do you call 3 times faster. So this is how it sounded. The opposite of it is the jig by the Brobdingnagians. Like there's a giants, and then jig, like you probably know, it's like a very fast Scottish dance, like a real dance, like of Irish people. And he scored it in the time signature of 24/1. So the working unit there is a whole note. 1, it means a whole note. And the traditional time signature is usually like 12/8, like that's the most common. So he doubles it, he makes it 24/1, and that's how it sounds. So as you see, the tricks, that what it does, this contradiction between the length of the beat like, and the perceived pace. Like, as you see, it can create like very humoristic pictures. Well, I guess like now we can like get a gist like of what are those expressive means of music that we are sensitive to, and often is that we don't even notice them. It kind of like happens automatically, like our mind just like as though makes sense. It starts connecting dots like between what it perceives, what it hears. Of course, if we are focused on music, if we pay attention to it, probably our mind will notice more dots and will make more connections. So you will get like a full story. But even people who are not that attentive or not that knowledgeable, they will notice enough to some sort of as though make sense of a piece of music, some sort of create a story in a way you can characterize it that would justify those sets of feelings that we are experiencing in the music. And then that part would be individual. Like you might think that it's like, I don't know, like about some majesty, like whatever. And I might think, oh, it's just a majestic mountain, for instance, or somebody else. But then there would be that majestic, like something that would unite it. And that majestic would come exactly from one of those biological universals that we kind of spotted in the music. And this is basically what allows people share their impressions from music and kind of be together like when they're experiencing the same thing, especially if they were raised in the same environment and exposed to the same thing, then they like more likely would agree than disagree with each other in evaluations of the same thing. So what is important for us as audiences is when we patronize like some music, where we go to some event, like buy tickets for something or buy a recording or whatever, is so that we take a note of like what the music expresses, and then try to encourage like those performers or those composers who are more expressive in what they're doing, what they're offering, and maybe let the other ones know that they're not expressive enough, so that they improve like something, work on it, and that would like kind of sustain quality, like a good kind of standing in that tradition, which we all, whether we like it or not, keep carrying on, like from us to the next generations. Well, this is like the note on which I wanted to finish our conversation.
Any questions?
Could you recap all the different expressive parameters you described so far?
That we covered, yeah, sure. Like we basically started with the dynamics. So it's like our kind of encoded some sort of relations between loud and soft. Then between accents, that would be articulation. Like accents, accentuations, like very fragmented, like flow of sounds, as opposed to very smooth, like legato-like. Then the next one had to do with our perception of leaps and steps in music. So it had to do with melody. And
Tempo?
yeah, then the tempo. And then the next one after that, the differences between tempo and rhythm. Because we also like respond to when we hear that the notes are short, for instance, but the tempo is long. Well, there are a few more. These are not the only ones. But the ones that we covered are the primary and the most kind of like without too many explanations. Like the other ones, like I could have mentioned, like it's harmony, for instance, because people also hear the difference between consonance and dissonance. But with harmony, it is like harder. You have to explain more about it because there is dissonance and consonance on physical level, as what we hear as sounds agree with each other or disagree with each other. Concordance or discordance of sounds, and then there is aesthetic impression from it, because in some cultures they might take something that we hear as dissonant, and then they might think that it is very good, in fact, and something that we hear as like very what do you call consonant, they might think it's not good at all. So here again, it's a universality from the point of view of the distinction. But it's not universality from the point of view of semantic association as what is associated with what. But these other things I could have covered like in a separate like a presentation, like whatever we didn't cover today. So, any questions or wishes? Thank you. Thanks.
Any
Oh.
questions?
Well, I just want to say that okay, music can also be used to, what should I say, to manipulate people.
Of course.
For example, military marches and things like that, you know. And I think music is very powerful
Yeah.
in the emotions it can engender in the listeners.
Yeah, music has been used like the best illustration of what you're talking about is probably church, like religious music.
Exactly.
Because every religion takes advantage of like music
Yeah.
in projecting like this or that, and then it depends what kind of religion it is.
Yeah.
Like it can be peaceful, then it would be like I don't know, like Buddhist music, all about meditation, relaxation, or it could be like militant, like I don't know, in some primitive, so-called primitive cultures, like you have like war dances, for instance.
Yeah.
It can be ritual, like also like in New Zealand, for instance, they have very coloristic Maori people, like they express like anger, like you can check maybe on YouTube, you will see like it's very entertaining, but it's like so angry, like really, and that's also is considered to be what they call part of religion, and it penetrates like in some, for instance, rituals. Like if you look at New Zealandian wedding, you would see like suddenly like a bride and a groom, they would make faces like as though it's like tigers like roaring at each other. And it's part of ritual because that's what they associate with like marriage. Like, it's very common actually for religions, for like especially for folk cultures to equate like for instance marriage with death, because they think all of it is based on kin. So like they think in terms of kin, like if you have a daughter and then you're giving your daughter like for some other like family, then it's as though she leaves your kin. So it's as though she dies for your kin. But then like she is born like for the other, like for whom she marries. And she becomes part of their family.
I mean, emotion, music is basically the language of emotion, so to speak. And because of that, what you're saying, you know, makes so much sense, because how do we manipulate through emotions? So, you know, if we're a good orator, you know, it's not so much what we say, it's how we say it.
And the emotion.
And the
that you
emotion,
convey,
exactly, that's what makes music so powerful, you know, as a means of manipulation, so to speak.
Well, but that again, like take cinema, like there is no like film without music, and now it's exactly for this reason, because the filmmaker wants to like control you, to control your response to what you are shown on the screen. The
In fact,
director.
one of the things when I was at USC, I was taking film music, and then one of the things that they did was that they would turn off the music and just show this very excited chase scene. And you were felt like nothing, or for 10 minutes, they were chasing each other without you feeling anything. But as soon as the music was there, you would, you know, get excited, or, you know, like if it's a horror movie, you take the music out, there's nothing to be afraid of. You know, suspense and all of that dies without music.
And another area where everybody knows about it, that influence of music, is commercials. Like, why do you think, like, in the restaurant, for instance, they would choose, like, what to play, or in some grocery store? Like, it's all calculated, because they know that people will spend more money, for instance, if, like, if it's, like, say, it looks very private, and then the music is very tender, like, playing, like, some guitars, like, in the background. It would be, like, perceived as fancy and some sort of personal. Then if it is, like, some, like, cheap, like some sort of popular, standard, typical popular music. That's you more find like in stores like 99 cents or like, you know, shrifty, like something like that.
Secondary, but first music was to be beautiful and add to inner life of person, of the soul. But that's already what we make of music.
Yes.
To control, to manipulate. But
Right. But if you even take like what you're talking about, folk music type of like village like lifestyle, it's also like very much control related, because like over there, like it's very important for one person to kind of be able to kind of mesh like with other people and doing something together, like for instance some collective work.
folk, yes, but classical.
Classical music, it moves it like one step higher, because you have classical music in states, like where you have like centralized state. That's like what is common. China, for instance, India, like they all like Persia, like they all developed their own classical systems of music when they became centralized, and then that was a way of how to order a life of citizens within the state, so that you wouldn't have upheavals, riots, like people like killing each other. They needed order, and then they kind of created that order to redirect the animosity towards some other parties, like neighbors or whatever. And then that's the function what classical music also did, because Western classical music is no exception. It also had like a platform like from which it came. When it became like transposed from ancient Greeks like to Western Europe, it was all about Christianity. So it was all about like monks culture, like all this like singing, like.
What about Mahler, Beethoven?
Well, that's like a very late development. It gradually built up.
With don't have any of this, right?
Uh,
No control, no manipulation. It's
Of course, there is manipulation too from that point of view. When Beethoven composes like his symphony, he wants you to feel in a certain way. he kind of he would perceive that it's wrong. Like if he, for instance, has his Ninth Symphony, like Ode to Joy, and then you feel morbid when it is Ode to Joy, and you say, no, that's not right. I don't want it.
Like Mozart's Requiem.
Oh,
Yes.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I never.
Well, it's always some kind of like mental control of one party or another.
But not your.
I mean, even your personal enjoyment of it, you could regard as self-manipulation in that you're trying to condition yourself into a particular state.
Yes.
So you listen to one kind of music to feel a certain way, you listen to a different kind of music to feel a different kind of a way, and so it's...
manipulation can be thought about as a negative or a positive. For instance, I can, if I want you to feel happy, that is, I want to make you, it is manipulating you, but in a
I
positive
just
way.
don't like the word manipulation.
Because it's been used in a negative
Yeah, it has a bad connotation.
But see, the mother manipulates the child by singing a lullaby. Like the child wants to cry, and then the mother sort of like soothes it down. But that's what happens.
I just never
Just
saw
change the word manipulate to influence, and then it's all fine. Yeah. It feels better that way. The vibes are better. Yeah.
Of course, it's true.
But music is always a tool of emotional regulation. Let's put it in that way, because it's like one way or another, something has to be adjusted.
Very nice happy.
No manipulation.
Regulation.
Regulation through its some sort of hedonistic nature, because it pleases you, it makes you happy naturally. And then even if it is sad, it is still kind of like you want to hear it again, and that you desire to hear it again is because it brings like some kind of joy into your life, you know, whether you like it or not. And that's basically how it sells you, like all those like presentations of negative things, like loss of something or anger at something or fear. Music also can depict like all of that, all the negatives except the disgust.
Yeah. So I was about to ask actually. I realize it's probably asking you to speculate, but why do you think that all the various negative emotions have some kind of sweet flavor of them? Sweet sorrow, sweet grief, sweet anger. Like that's like sounds good. It's pleasurable, except disgust. Why that one?
Very interesting question.
Because all the other negative emotions, there's like a pleasant version of them in music.
Oh, but that's exactly how music sells it to you, because something in its sound has to be attractive to you, to kind of make you like it and kind of listen to it repeatedly. Maybe learn it, or maybe join, like, and you yourself like to learn how to play it.
Experience it again.
Yeah.
I don't think disgust is.
Disgust is the exact opposite.
I don't. I'm not sure I agree, right? Because like you can feel powerful when you're angry, so that one fine makes sense, right?
Okay.
And grief has some kind of like cathartic release sort of component to it, so I can sort of construe some pleasant character to it. But with disgust, also like a lot of in-group,
How about
out-group.
fear? Or what is pleasant about fear?
Adrenaline? I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. Who would like to experience like?
Yeah, well, everyone goes to Six Flags and people do all sorts of things.
That's
So
true.
the adrenaline is probably a good argument, actually.
I
But-
can express disgust in 2 notes.
That's disappointment
Or sarcasm.
or sarcasm, yeah. Because like,
More
but think
sarcasm.
about like disgust, right? Because like
Sarcasm,
people do all sorts of othering in order to like be disgusted at some other group to justify doing bad things to them, and humans do all sorts of unreasonable versions of disgust because it feels good to other people and makes you feel better about yourself. I'm speculating, but you know.
But like in the same way, like would you like voluntarily have some disgusting food?
People do that all the time, and then they learn to love it. No one likes beer the first time they try it. I doubt most people like really bitter things the first time they try it, and then it's an acquired taste.
It doesn't acquire taste like caviar. You know, it's really not delicious. I mean, after you have it.
What do you mean? Caviar is delicious.
Yeah, it's an acquired taste for any food. You know, for some people, if you're brought up with it, you love it, you know, and then for some other people, you don't like it. So it's
That's an interesting one.
But would you do repeatedly use the same thing that caused disgust in you? Probably not.
Smelly
because
cheese.
The purpose of disgust is
No,
to
it's
kind of
just-
teach you
well,
not to take something or
there's
to
a
avoid
higher
something,
biological
not
thing
to
to
deal
smell.
with it.
Yeah.
And the purpose of
Presence of
music is
bacteria.
in contrary
Yeah, there you
to,
go.
to
So,
hook
right,
you
yeah.
on something.
that's
So in that sense, the opposite.
But I don't know, but in everyday life, our emotions are usually pretty much on a level playing field. However, with certain kinds of music, we can experience deeper emotions or higher or lower or different emotions that we don't experience in everyday life.
That's true.
I mean, very true.
Yeah.
It's an enrichment in that sense.
Yeah, this is one of the functions of music. Well, that is why in many cultures you have musical theater. Its primary function is to kind of reward people, to kind of, because if they, for instance, imagine how in Europe it was in Middle Ages, you would if for instance if you're a jeweler, so you have to go to the same store and then take the same thing and do it every bloody day is exactly the same, and then you become some sort of bored, to the extent that people had all this mass madness, recorded for instance, Tarantella, massive, where people just convulsively go into some dance, and the psychologists explain it as exactly because in those days, there was too much of the same, and then the kind of mind, as though of sensory deprivation, it would just generate psychosis or some kind of visions or whatever. You see, and music is exactly, it prevents it from happening because it works like a valve. And at the same time, if you are bored, you go to opera and then you see some story about some queen or some wizard and then whatever, things that you would never see around, and that would be interesting and entertaining.
Only if you're bored. You just don't go to opera. Only if you're bored.
Really Wagner.
Sometimes it's really boring in the opera.
Yeah, but it's very common, not only for Western music, because you have music theater in China, in Indochina, in India, and even in many African cultures too, you have some sort of, as though impersonations of all sorts. During festivals, it's very common, to impersonate some story, by means of music and singing or instruments. It's just people, they need that kind of sensory feedback of some kind, to be stirred emotionally.
Yeah.
Especially if you live all by yourself, some people, imagine again, it's all, what do you call, evolutionary. And evolutionary, all of our senses have been programmed approximately 40,000 years ago. At the time, basically, where you had cave culture, people were dispersed. In the entirety of Europe, you had 10,000 people, at around 40,000 years ago. It's hard for us to imagine even those numbers. So it means that you literally would walk hundreds of kilometers and maybe meet two people, or three people. Of course, for those people, it was very difficult. That is why they basically probably invented music. That's kind of my guess.
Honestly, if today a course like this would be taught at a university to composition students, they would benefit a lot more from learning how to compose and what to think about, rather than, going about it so formalistically, without really understanding what is the purpose of you writing music.
They are taught too much of technique, and then this technique is not explained to them. Why this technique and not some other technique?
Why do they write? Why write like this? I mean, what is the purpose? Honestly, if people begin to, even performers, why, I mean, so you see notes and you see articulation and instead of that, I mean, what is music trying to really say? And take you from here to there, and then what to accentuate and what to bring out and what to, sort of put forth so that you can make the music more emotional and more picturesque or more communicative, you know? It's really formally going about things is dead.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing as even with the definition of music, which should be a very good subject for another meeting, as what is music and what is not music. But everybody assumes that everybody knows what music is. But if you start questioning yourself, what is this? Like, it's actually not that obvious. And like none of dictionaries like offer a definition of music. They basically like all are saying, oh, it's either they go into listing what was considered music by some authorities back then, or they just like say, well, you know it.
It was actually for a conference, it was like a decade ago or something. Aleksey and I did a talk on what is music and constructed a gigantic flowchart that tried to exhaustively classify absolutely everything into it. It ended up being incredibly hard to pin down at the boundaries. Like when it's obvious, everybody knows. But all sorts of things like are wind chimes music, right? Or like is a bird chirping music? And then you start getting things that are similar to that, but not natural. Does it matter whether it's man-made? Does it not matter if it's man-made? And then you like start dissecting all of it and you realize like, oh yeah. And then very unsatisfyingly, the Grove Dictionary of Music, the Harvard Dictionary of Music, the Cambridge Dictionary of Music, all of them don't even have a definition. It's just missing.
Or they'll say something like sound in time.
Something so general as to include all of speech, this, burping. Like they're either too general or just missing. And you're like, the definition's not right. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes so generalized.
Exactly.
It doesn't-
Pattern
it's-
sound
it
is a
doesn't
common
have
one.
A handle.
It's like pattern sound is a common one.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
But it's like, okay, there's lots of like, I don't know, the sound
Well,
of
it's
an
like,
exhaust
kind
is
of like
pattern.
defining art. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
of the same sort.